Story 1. Gambling, not different from drugs, it's even worse than drugs. I worked in a casino, and I could write a novel about the things I saw. It was the saddest place on earth. Story 2. Gambling. Also, this phone, any screen for that matter. I have never in my life spent so much time on a device. Ever since iPod Touches came out, it's been a thing, but lately, what is actually happening? I'm trying to live a normal life. Can I? Is anyone else? Help may be needed for millions of us very soon. Story 3. Social media comments can get really personal and affect you deeply if you're not mentally prepared for it. Anonymity gives people the power to become unkind at times. Story 4. I know someone who is literally addicted to pornography. He literally told me that he watches it several times a day, and it has reached a point where he will watch it out of boredom. Also, his attitude towards women is extremely poor. He is disrespectful to his mother, constantly uses derogatory words for women, and speaks to women as if they are worthless. And yet, his standards are ridiculously high. He is not very good looking by any objective measure. He is unattractive. Yet, his preference is for women who are exceptionally beautiful, with large breasts, big buttocks, slim waist, essentially stunning women. These are just unrealistic standards. Most women do not have the physical alterations and perfection seen in adult film stars. And, without being harsh, he gets rejected every single time, and afterwards, he rants about how all women are the same and how terrible we all are. The reason is clear. He gets rejected because his standards are too high. Being realistic, women who look like that are not likely to choose men who look like him, especially when coupled with his attitude. So, I think pornography can damage the mind. Story 5. In my opinion, self-harm is particularly troubling, especially if you don't tend to scar easily or live by yourself. It becomes even more problematic when you learn how to use makeup to cover scars and find waterproof makeup so you can go swimming with others without them realizing. This comes from someone who has been doing it since they were 7 years old. Story 6. Pudding. I worked with a guy whose wife signed him up for a Pudding of the Month club as a gag gift. Turns out the guy really likes pudding. I borrowed a power saw from him one time, and he showed me a section of his basement that was just shelves and shelves of pudding. Pudding cups, instant pudding, the kind you have to cook. He even had a chest freezer filled with some weird foreign kind of pudding pop. He actually looked pretty good, considering all the sugar he ate. Story 7. Polyaddiction. Becoming addicted to something else as soon as one addiction is conquered. For me, it started with alcohol and drugs, then went to food, then caffeine, then social media, then sex, which is masturbation without pornography. And little things crop up too, like being addicted to chewing the skin off my fingers and hands or chewing up the inside of my mouth. Story 8. Maybe not the worst, but it's very easy to get addicted to caffeine and write it off like it's okay or a quirky personality thing. At one point in college, I was drinking 6-shot drinks called graveyards where I went, and they would have me vibrating, literally shaking in the hands, and I still drank them until like 12 a.m. or later. I don't want to, which feels like a can't, quit caffeine either. Coffee and tea are like my favorite things in the world, and the most I can do is cut back and drink decaf if I want something after dinner. Story 9. Dopamine addiction. It's the root of many issues, I believe. The body keeps needing more, continuously seeking a fix from something. Anything. Social media, gambling, drugs, all are somewhat related. Story 10. Maybe not the worst, but one I haven't seen mentioned yet is daydreaming. People can spend hours at a time inside their own head rather than participating in the world around them. This can ruin relationships, jobs, and make it horrifically dangerous to drive. When daydreaming begins to affect interaction with the outside world, it's called maladaptive daydreaming. What makes it difficult is that it is completely internal. You can flush people's drugs, you can try to keep them away from the casino, but you can't withhold their own brain. Story 11. Food. We live in a society that judges based on looks. You still need to eat, your addiction to live. Everyone has an opinion about what you just need to do. Anytime you try to fix it, people will share unsolicited advice and comments, and possibly even tease you about it. Story 12. A narcissist is going to tear your life apart, and you'll think it's your fault for most of it. With the drugs and alcohol, at least you can blame chemicals. With narcissism, you blame yourself before you ever realize that the chemicals are there. Story 13. Pornography dehumanizes everyone involved. As a user, it trains your mind to view humans as consumable. The majority of the content online is produced by exploiting individuals, many of them minors. It destroys your ability to be intimate, in the broadest sense of the word, with other people. Story 14. Pornography. Guys, just stop. It destroys your brain and your relationships. So many exes couldn't get off of it, and even my most recent ex was so into pornography that he started seeing me as worthless. Honestly, what's the point if you reject your partner? I was always available. Eventually, he began to bully me, and after he became neglectful emotionally and abusive, it was over. I know it's exciting, but even if you're with someone attractive, it's going to ruin any drive. I just don't understand the appeal of it. Story 15. Addicted to the idea of your lover's maximum potential for loving you. Seriously, darling, please. If he truly wanted to, he would have done it a long time ago. And let's talk about gambling. People addicted to gambling will sell their own homes, dip into their kids' education funds, take out loans, and more. They just sink deeper and deeper until it becomes incredibly hard to climb out of the mess they've made. Story 16. My little brother had that monkey on his back. We went for a couple of frames of snooker a few years back, and I watched in horror as he put over 300 pounds in a roulette machine. He put more in the machine in 30 minutes than I took home as wages in a week. I did, of course, scold him and insist on him buying us both a pint. His wife manages their finances to this day. Story 17. Video games. You can spend a lot of your life doing nothing and still have a sense of accomplishment. I used to have a buddy online who would ask someone, "Are you going to put that on your resume?" Whenever they bragged about how good they were at a game. It still rings true. I have spent thousands of hours, killed millions of enemies, and was in the top percentile for different video games. Now, I don't play anymore, and I lost contact with all the people I used to play with. I ignored people around me, hurt my relationships with my family, and didn't make lasting friendships. All because I wanted to be good at a game that is now outdated and no one cares about. Story 18. Gambling is the only non-chemical thing that causes the addiction response in the brain, but lots of things being mentioned here copy what causes the gambling response intentionally. Addiction experts consult on a wide variety of products to intentionally induce this reaction. Story 19. I don't want to downplay the physical harm of other addictive substances, but in my honest opinion, addiction to abusive relationships is also profoundly damaging. Each of those relationships harms one's self-esteem. This, in turn, makes it even more likely to enter into another abusive relationship, regardless of whether these relationships begin with butterflies. Story 20. Having a crush. Whenever I don't like someone, I feel the need to find someone else to like. I feel like I need to have someone to think about and be delusional about. Story 21. Food. You get fat, you don't want to move, which makes you more fat. The fat also makes you sad, which makes you eat more. The problem is that you can't stop eating. You can't just quit it cold turkey. You have to get your dose of food every day, just not enough to make you happy and most likely not as delicious as you would like it to be. So, you are sitting in this difficult situation, craving the real deal, not being able to just give up and getting steady doses of small, unsatisfying portions, until the day you just relapse and be happy for a week or a month and eat whatever you crave. Just to see that whatever you lost in months of diet and hard work is back on your hips in the blink of an eye. Yes, this sucks. Story 22. The companionship provided by a toxic and abusive relationship is a good guess. I was desperately hooked on that for 10 years because I knew without her, I'd never have anyone again. Story 23. Food addictions are crippling forever. You have to have it to survive. Too much is a curse. Starving gives a rush and triggers concern in others. Binging and purging is a roller coaster of chemical imbalance and electrolytes going haywire. Controls those around you and creates chaos. There is always a gorilla in the room when food is the topic of discussion or the object of the gathering. Lived the nightmare for many years, still dealing with it daily, every moment, every time I see a commercial for potential binge food. Sticks of butter, a jar of mayonnaise, a bottle of vegetable oil. These things blow breakers in my brain. I would have vastly preferred something that is hard to get, not necessary to live, and expensive. Just a few thoughts on the subject. Story 24. Gaming. I took a 2-year break from gaming, and it improved my marriage and relationship with my children. Saved money from buying games and new PC upgrade parts too. Story 25. Alcohol. Too much of it can and will kill you. Yes, food addictions are bad, but it's possible to cut back on food consumption because although it's necessary for survival, it's not a chemical dependency. Story 26. Pornography can destroy confidence, relationships, viewpoints on people and the world. Pornography is very harmful and can lead relatively normal people down horrible rabbit holes. Story 27. Surprised. I haven't seen a top comment mention self-harm. I got addicted to it at the start of COVID, and it snowballed rapidly. Like from tiny scratches to sty cuts to seeing fat, it just got worse until I got caught. I currently have over 200 scars around my body from myself. I had a specific method of self-harm. I counted each and every cut. It's a type of addiction that's hard to imagine if you haven't felt it before. I'm better now, but I pray for everyone that has to deal with it. Just because it's not a drug doesn't mean it won't become a mind-numbing addiction. That is probably one of the worst non-substance addictions you could go through.